biggest bigwig, and this is for breast cancer awareness. So.
All right.
But I kind of like it. I'm not going to do that. I'll wear a pin.
September 17th, 2019 regular meeting of the Chatham County Savannah Metropolitan Planning Commission will now come to order. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge of allegiance.
We thank you, O Lord, for the good weather that we're receiving. We thank you for all the many blessings that we receive, even though some of them we're not entitled to. Look on us with your mercy. Give us the desire to make good, clear decisions, to be humble, and remember for those who are most and less fortunate than we are. Look at our service men and women. Give them the strength and the power to do the job that they're assigned to do. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Please the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. For all the members of the commission, if you wish to speak, please press the button below the mic, and when you get through speaking, press it again and it'll cut it off.
And if you don't do it, or if something doesn't work out, there's a person in there driving, so they'll cut you off and all. So if we don't like it, we'll cut you off.
Okay. There's a sign-in sheet near the door to the hearing room. Please sign this sheet to record your attendance at today's meeting. For those of you who would like to speak, we ask that you sign one of our blue speaker cards. Give the blue speaker card to the staff member at the front table so we can call your name at the appropriate time. There are agendas on the table outside near the door to the hearing room. Today's agenda is broken down into several parts. First, notices, proclamations, and acknowledgments. Next, consent agenda, which consists of items for which the applicant is in agreement with the staff recommendation and there are no known objections. To outline the order in which the meeting is conducted, each petition has a report presented by staff to the board providing information on the petition. After the staff presentation, board members may ask questions of staff regarding the presentation for clarification. The petitioner is then offered to make a presentation regarding his petition to the commission. Time frame of 10 to 30 minutes is allowed for petitioner's presentation. The board may then ask questions of the petitioner for clarification. Afterwards, the floor will be open for public comment. The total public comment time will be equivalent to the petitioner's presentation time. Therefore, it is important that speaker cards are provided to the chairman if you wish to speak on a petition. Once the floor is open for public comment on a petition, no additional public speakers will be allowed. If you are not certain you want to speak, still provide a card. You will have the option to decline when your name is called. After public comment, the petitioner will have the opportunity for rebuttal and then additional questions by the board. Finally, the board will take action. Let's see. Notices, proclamations, and acknowledgments. The approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion made by and seconded by Mr. Welch. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Motion passes. Notices, proclamations, and acknowledgments. September 24th, planning meeting at 1 p.m. in County Commission Chambers, 124 Bull Street. October 8th, 2019 regular MPC meeting will be held 1:30 p.m. at these same County Commission chambers. Items requested to be removed from the final agenda. There are no items requested to be removed. Also, none requested to be withdrawn. Number 7, the consent agenda. Approval of the August 27th, 2019 briefing and regular meeting minutes. Have a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the August 22nd, 2019 executive session minutes. Have a motion? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Old business, there is no old business. Regular business, new construction, number 7, new construction, Victorian Historic District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. All right. So the applicant is requesting approval for demolition of 2 existing buildings and for new construction of a 1-story convenience store and gas station for the property located at 1210 Drayton Street. All signage and the gas pump island that you can see, I'll show the site plan. These are the 2 existing buildings here. This is the site plan. So the gas pump island and any signage is not part of this application. So the remainder of the site and the building, which is located here, are part of this review. 1210 Drayton Street, which is the old gas station building here, was constructed in 1959, and 108 East Henry Street, which is a metal storage building here, was constructed in 1975. Neither are contributing buildings within the local district, and staff is required to review all non-contributing buildings for potential historic status, and staff did review that per the standards within the ordinance, and we feel that the non-contributing buildings, they weren't constructed within the current period of significance, which ends in 1923. Therefore, we don't feel that they meet the criteria for historic designation, and recommend approval of their demolition. And I did want to back up for 1 second too. This application was received on August 20th, which means it was pre-implementation date of NUZO on September 1st. So this is reviewed under the previous zoning ordinance still. Regarding development standards, this is a 2B zoning district, and the ordinance states that fuel stations are permitted in the 2B zoning district, provided that approval is obtained from the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special use, and that gasoline pumps and other service facilities shall be set back not less than 12 feet behind a required front yard setback. As you all know, use is not part of the COA process, and so staff is recommending that a condition of this COA approval be to receive a special use approval from the ZBA. So the ordinance requires that corner lots with structures facing a north-south service street, that the front yard setbacks be 0 feet, and which they have done here. Side yard setbacks, we're abutting in our district, so that will be over on this side. Minimum of 10 feet is required, and they're actually providing a 20-foot vegetated buffer, and then obviously significantly more distance to the building, so we had no concerns there. No rear yard setback is required. This is the rear yard here, and there is a small setback to the lane, which we don't have any concerns with. Regarding visual compatibility and the height of the proposed building, so these are the context elevations. This is the Drayton Street facade. This is the Henry Street facade. And this is the parking lot side, so it's an internal facade. These are the closest adjacent structures here. And this is the gas canopy that's not currently part of this review process. So there aren't any visually related commercial or retail buildings, obviously. The Sears building, the former Sears building across the street to the west is actually a non-contributing building as well. And as you know, our context for reviewing visual compatibility is for contributing buildings. So we do feel that the height and proportions of this building do not dominate the visually related residential buildings, which you can see here, and therefore is acceptable. Regarding the location of the building on the site itself, we feel it's in the appropriate location on the site, which is pulled up to the corner of the intersection here, so the rhythm is compatible. The main entrance to the building is proposed on the Drayton Street side. The parapet extends up here to identify that as the main entrance, and this is a secondary entrance without signage from the parking lot side. With regard to building materials, these are the renderings. So the majority of the building is proposed to be these two types of brick that you can see here. Aluminum storefront for all of the windows, metal for the awnings, wood for the cornice. There were a couple of materials not identified, and that is the scuppers and downspouts, the building light fixtures, which are shown in various locations here. And then one concern that we have about the site light fixture that's proposed, as you can see it over here, it's sort of this cobra head light fixture that we don't feel is visually compatible within the historic district. So we would ask that they reselect that. Regarding walls of continuity, they are proposing a brick lattice fence along this property line here and then continuously across this property line with the exception of over the driveway here. And that would be this brick lattice fence here. And then this is the brick lattice dumpster enclosure. The dumpster enclosure is at the rear of the property here. We feel that helps create a wall of continuity in front of the parking lot there. 18 parking spaces are provided. Within the ordinance, there is a requirement for bicycle storage and parking. At least 2 off-street spaces for safely securing a bicycle shall be provided for retail sales and services. So we need that to be included. And then the one other concern that we had is that service loading and unloading areas are required to utilize the lane only for delivery and pickup when there's lane access. So this can probably be handled with a note on the drawing, but we want to ensure that the trucks are not going to be entering and exiting through this area, but only through the lane, and that this entrance is only for customers. So we are recommending approval for the demolition of both of the buildings and for new construction with 5 conditions, and those can be submitted to staff with the building permit drawings that we stamp before they can apply for a permit, because otherwise the proposed work is visually compatible and meets the standards. 1, and that's to obtain approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals for fuel station use in the 2B zoning district. 2, submit signage and gas pump island for certificates of appropriateness. 3, provide at least 2 off-street spaces for safely securing a bicycle. 4, ensure the service loading and unloading is provided only through the lane entrances and that the Henry Street entrance shall only be used for customers. And 5, provide specifications for the scuppers and downspouts, the building light fixtures, and reselect the site light fixtures. We did receive 2 letters of opposition, one from the Victoria Neighborhood Association and another from a resident of the Victorian district. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Mr. Noah?
You stated that on the Drayton side of this building, it was a 0 lot line?
Drayton is, yes.
And with it being on the corner of two one-way streets, is there special consideration as far as visibility of traffic in that area?
That's not part of the
It
COA
would be a
process.
specific-
Yeah, I think that would probably be either part of the the site review plan or the building permitting process. Traffic engineering, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Ms. Milton?
So customers will enter in and exit on the Henry Street side?
Well, they could use the lane as well. The standard is just stating that trucks can't use Henry Street. The trucks and the deliveries can't use Henry Street, only the lane. The customers would be able to use whichever if our ordinance doesn't prohibit them from using it, how's that? I don't know if the owner would want to.
Henry's 2 lanes already, and is there enough room for another lane as a curb cut to enter in and exit out of the service station without getting directly into traffic?
Well, there is already, let's look at the pictures there. Sorry, it froze in 1 second. So this whole, you can see it here, this whole area is actually already a curb cut. And then this is the turning lane here. And I think, again, those items are probably addressed at traffic engineering and building permitting level.
Very good.
Any other questions of staff? We'll now hear from the petitioner. Please identify yourself.
Mark Cadman. My name's Mark Cadman. I'm here representing Bobby Chu and Boswell Design Service.
Did you have anything to add?
I don't have anything further to add. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the petitioner?
No.
Floor is open for motion. Oh, I do have I'm sorry. We do have a couple of several speaker cards here. John Brown, speaking in opposition. Please step forward and identify yourself. Gary Guthrie. Please identify yourself for the record, sir.
My name is Gary Guthrie. I live in the Victorian District, and I'm here representing the Victorian Neighborhood Association. The Victorian Neighborhood Association is opposed to a convenience store at this location. There are already 3 convenience stores in the East Victorian District. El Cheapo is 2 blocks away, Victorian Market is 4 blocks away, Kelly Mart is 3 blocks away, and another Chu's is 5 blocks away on the west side. Our residents have been working over the years to upgrade the Victorian District. Multiple convenience stores in close proximity do not help to uplift a neighborhood. There's the constant problem of litter, as well as loitering, especially when alcohol is sold. We have had past problems with excessive window signage at Victorian Market, and they had also attempted to add an additional freezer for their alcoholic beverages. Since the codes department is already overwhelmed with other issues, it's up to the neighborhood to monitor the violations and report them. Another convenience store nearby will only add to the effort required by the neighborhood to keep our area improving. In addition, the location is at a busy intersection. The addition of a service station with gas pumps will only increase the hazards for the many pedestrians and bicyclists who are a significant portion of our neighbors. Also, neighbors are hoping to restore tree lawns which have been lost over the years. This will help with the greening of the neighborhood. The addition of a gas station at this location will make it impossible to restore tree lawn at that intersection. Convenience stores do not upgrade an area. There are other options nearby. A large Kroger's is just a few blocks away, as well as the existing convenience stores. This is not needed in our neighborhood and will only make continued improvement to our area more difficult. Thank you.
Any questions to Mr. Guthrie? Next speaker card, John Brown. Please step forward. Identify yourself for the record.
I would just like to back up with what Mr. Guthrie said. We have multiple convenience stores. We have Kroger. And, also you're looking at the 2 streets, Henry and Drayton, being one-way streets with a lot of traffic. I think it would be rather difficult getting in and out of this place too, with only one. And then you have houses that are backing up to this gas station, and they would be, where homeowners live, and you would have trucks entering and exiting from that lane behind there. So I just think for those reasons, we should not allow this to be built. Okay?
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Third speaker, Trudy Hood. Is it Trudy Hood? Herod, I'm sorry. Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Trudy Herod, and I'm representing the Victorian Neighborhood Association Board of Directors. I have a letter from our president, Ryan Madsen. The letter is regarding the petition by Choose Convenience Mart at 1210 Drayton Street. The Board of Victorian Neighborhoods Association stands opposed to this proposal and does not wish to see a convenience store/fuel station at this location. We believe the following points recommend denial of the petition. The proposed convenience store is incompatible with a walkable, pedestrian, and bicycle-oriented neighborhood and would erode the qualities that we believe are integral to the identity, character, and quality of life in the Victorian district. There are already several auto-oriented developments nearby which feature parking lots facing the street with traffic coming and going that discourages pedestrian activity and creates unsafe conditions for pedestrians and bicyclists. We would like to encourage future infill development that frames and enhances our historic streetscapes, and we stand opposed to auto-oriented development that serves to weaken and disrupt it. The parcel is not presently zoned for a fuel station. We believe that a fuel station would generate higher incidences of vehicular turns and stops at the proposed site. The use is incompatible with the volume and speed of traffic along this particular intersection of busy one-way streets, Drayton and Henry, which already present a dangerous road environment due to high speeds of travel, weaving, and distracted driving. The East Victorian neighborhood already has 2 convenience stores located nearby, El Cheapo at Abercorn and Duffy, 2 blocks away, also with the fuel station, and the Victorian Market on Abercorn and Wahlberg, 4 blocks away. These are just 2 and 4 blocks away, respectively, from the proposed Choose convenience store. We currently struggle with ongoing litter and waste from customers at the El Cheapo convenience store. The city and the owners have done little to mitigate this blight apart from occasional damage control, most notably the Great American Litter Pickup Day, which is 1 day a year. Duffy Street on the block between Abercorn and Lincoln is presently strewn with litter, and we do not wish to see the Drayton and Henry streetscapes follow suit. Thank you for considering these concerns. We hope that they carry enough gravity for the MPC to appreciate the negative consequences of this unwanted development and will vote to deny the petitioner. I would also like to say that the city has been making strides in making Drayton, Whitaker, Henry, and Anderson safer by installing flashing pedestrian crossing signs and solar-powered speed monitoring signs, which are great, and putting this particular convenience store and gas station on that corner would be like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Also, on the way up here, I drove down Duffy Lane. It is as challenging as some of the West Virginia mountain biking streets or lanes, paths that I have. It's not a lane. I can't imagine a garbage truck going up that. I can't imagine a delivery truck going up that. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Herod? Petitioner is allowed rebuttal. Does the petitioner wish to speak against this? I understand staff has recommended approval. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Do I hear a second? I'll second that. Second, Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Karen?
Get the staff to speak to answer a question?
Sure.
Couple of questions,
She has questions of staff.
after she sneezes. I wanted to verify, this site has been a filling station since the 50s, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And presently, there are 4 driveways on this site, correct?
At least
Okay.
4.
So redoing this site as a gas station with only 1 driveway on a main road and 1 driveway on an alley will create a safer access situation?
Yeah, I mean, we don't review for safety, but we've been working with this petitioner for nearly a year, actually. They came in with a traditional suburban gas station layout with the building at the lane and the pumps at the street and, 4 curb cuts and all that. And so we've been working with them to get a more typical urban pattern with the building at the street and the main entrance, pedestrian friendly on Drayton, pumps in the back, all those kinds of things. So yeah, number of curb cuts will be reduced significantly, and hopefully improving the walkability in front of this building. But yes, a different gas station was built on this site in the 50s, and then this one was built in the 70s.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Has it been used as a gas station recently?
No, most recently, it was a taxi company.
And that's been probably the last 20 years, right?
I honestly don't know. It's probably been a while, but I honestly don't know how long it's been used for that, for taxi storage.
I am concerned about I'm concerned about the traffic and, I'm concerned about the traffic. I know we have nothing to do with that, but hopefully that'll be taken into consideration before.
I mean, it goes through other processes other than the certificate of appropriateness, which is just supposed to be for the design of the building and the placement on the site. It goes through traffic engineering, and there is a tree lawn ordinance, and all these.
And do you know about
Zoning
the
Board of
hours-
Appeals for the special use. And,
You know about the hours of operation?
no, sir. No, ma'am. Sorry. No, that's not part of this. Unfortunately, not part of the COA process.
Mr. Noah?
I would ask the director if she could explain what we're approving or what staff is recommending today in relation to a gas filling station.
One of the things that I want to make sure that that the audience understands is that a gas station right now is already allowed with the Board of Zoning Appeals approval. So you still will get an opportunity to speak to that use at that time. This is not what we are approving today. So item, I guess, number 2 of the letter where it says it's not presently zoned for a fuel station isn't exactly correct. It still has to go through another process, but the Board of Zoning Appeals will deal with reviewing that as a special use, and that's in Section 2B of the current zoning ordinance. What you're asked to do today is approve the
The design of the
design of the station and it fitting into the, with regards to going into the community. And I will say too that the elimination of all those driveway cuts by having one access point per road will make it a much safer environment for pedestrians and biking, and will possibly give you an opportunity to have better landscaping there too, to start improving that area of the roadway.
And we're strictly looking at appropriateness.
You're only looking at appropriateness and you're looking at it from the design standpoint. You're not looking at it for the use.
Correct. I just
just really clear, you're not looking at for the use. The Board of Zoning Appeals will be making that final determination when they come in to ask for a special use permit.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second to approve staff's recommendation. Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your hand and keep them up so she can count. Against? Motion passes. Next item, item number 8, rezoning map amendment, 2621 and 2529 Fort Argyle Road from RA Residential Agriculture to BN Neighborhood Business. Staff report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a petition to rezone 2 parcels and a portion of a 3rd parcel from its existing R-A Residential Agricultural District to a BN Neighborhood Business District, and this is in unincorporated Chatham County. The properties under consideration are located near the southwest intersection of Fort Argyle Road and Middle Landing Road. Here's a vicinity map, and as we zoom in a little closer, you can see the parcels themselves. The request is for the entirety of the Fort Argyle Road properties and approximately 0.39 acres of this back portion, this back parcel along Middle Landing Road. Petitioner has provided an updated survey showing the extent of the rezoning on that back parcel. In total, this would be a rezoning of approximately 1.8 acres, including all 3 of these parcels. The staff report, I have provided a map showing wetland features near the site. The entirety of the site is located within a flood zone AE, which indicates a 1% annual chance of flooding. And there are significant wetlands on the Middle Landing parcel towards the rear. However, based on the survey, the portion under consideration for rezoning is outside of the boundaries, for the most part, of those wetlands. Look at the aerial map. The subject sites are currently improved with single-family structures. Those are the 2 Fort Argyle Road properties. The rear portion along Middle Landing Road is vacant. Adjacent land uses to the site include, to the west, there is a cemetery. To the east, there is an existing convenience store, which has been in existence for an extended period of time and likely predates modern zoning policies. To the south is rural residential property as well as vacant property. And to the north is currently vacant but is part of the approved New Hampstead planned unit development. In the staff report, I have included the master plan for the adjacent areas of the New Hampstead PUD. Across Fort Argyle Road, they are planned for commercial uses. However, looking back at the future land use map for the southern side of Fort Argyle Road, it is entirely planned for suburban single-family residential. That's residential uses not to exceed 5 dwelling units per acre. The requested zoning district, again, is BN. This is neighborhood business, and it does permit a variety of commercial uses, including retail, general retail, restaurants, filling stations, automobile repair, banks and offices, and self-storage facilities, among other uses. Petitioner has not indicated an exact use for the property, but it is our understanding that the intent is to combine these 3 parcels with the existing convenience store parcel at the corner, combine them into 1 parcel to allow for a larger development site. Stepping through the rezoning criteria, staff finds that the southern side of Fort Argyle Road has primarily a rural residential character. While commercial is planned for the northern side of Fort Argyle Road, the southern side does have a significant rural residential character and is planned for that in the future land use map. Staff finds that the BN district could permit a variety of commercial uses that could be incompatible with this rural residential character. If the subject parcels were to be combined, the resulting acreage could permit a sizable development which would be incompatible with the existing residential uses. Staff also finds that while there is an existing commercial convenience store at the corner, that because this has likely been in existence for an extended period of time and predates modern zoning, that its existence in and of itself does not represent a valid reason to extend zoning further down Fort Argyle Road. We find that the BN district is inconsistent with the future land use designation and that potentially impervious surfaces such as parking lots associated with a commercial use could have negative impacts in this site specifically because of its location within a floodplain. So based on these findings, we are recommending denial of the requested rezoning.
Any questions of staff? Ms. Jarrett?
I wanted to find out, the commercial property and the subdivision, is that also in the floodplain?
I'm not 100%, you're talking about across the street on Fort Argyle Road? I'm not 100% sure. It looks like, based on this master plan and this image, that there are some wetland features. The petitioner might be able to answer that, but I'm not 100% sure.
Any other questions for staff? We'll now hear from the petitioner. Step forward, identify yourself for the record, sir.
Is that all you're using? Or do you have a few more. Okay, I'll see if I can. Do you know how to turn this on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Don Dykes, and I represent the petitioner for Argyle LLC. Well, I've got other things. Which way's up?
If anyone wishes to speak on this petition, please sign one of the blue speaker cards and present it at the front desk.
Thank you. The three parcels that we're seeking to rezone, two of them are along Fort Argyle Road, Highway 204. One of them is a small, about a third of an acre portion of a rear lot. Now, the existing property that is BN at the corner of Middle Landing Road and Fort Argyle Road is already zoned BN. It's had an existing convenience store there for decades. In the past, it had, I believe, fuel at one point, but at the present time, it does not have any fuel. Staff showed a lot of aerial photos. Let me show some pictures of the site so you can get a sense of what it looks like. But that's the convenience store as it sits today. And I don't know if you can see it well, but it has a curb cut all the way along the frontage. And it's a dated store. It might have been built in the 50s or even earlier. The petitioner would like to redevelop it. And the problem with trying to redevelop it is the lot is a trapezoid. It's very wide at the front, about 258 feet, very narrow at the rear, less than 100 feet, and not enough room to really redevelop it into anything. The adjoining parcels would give that parcel enough room to be redeveloped into something that's more of a use for the way the neighborhood is going. It sits directly opposite the main entrance to New Hampstead subdivision, or the big plan unit development. Right across there you go. sits directly across, and the properties are in X, so it's the two X's, a little sliver behind the BN piece. So the property directly fronts on 204, directly across what is part of the New Hampstead PUD, which is a commercial zoning directly across the street from it. As it currently sits, these two lots that front on 204 contain a duplex. And that's immediately next and west of, there's not much of a rule on this podium, everything wants to slide off. Excuse me. And then mobile home. And the mobile home is directly next to the cemetery. So there's not adequate room to redevelop the current convenience store without adding to it. And so what we did was try to recombine the two parcels up front on Highway 204 along with the rear parcel, all of which are owned by the petitioner. And in trying to work with staff had concerns about the limits of what was going to be rezoned. So we worked with staff to try to limit that to what was really necessary based on the wetlands study. We were able to limit that to only about 70 feet more of depth. I think it's about 70, 80 feet of depth that would go along the back of these three parcels. About a third of an acre, 70 feet by 200 and something feet, which would allow for the redevelopment. And the intent is, there's no specific plan at this point, but the intent is to redevelop it to something consistent with what's there, a convenience store, perhaps with fuel, with other businesses that are kind of neighborhood. There's not a whole lot out there. The neighboring parcels are a cemetery directly to the west, a great deal of wetlands immediately behind it, and then a BN zone parcel on the corner. And so there's not a lot of threat for further encroachment of commercial use, the BN beyond these parcels here. The wetland is pretty extensive out there. And there's only about 20 houses maybe that are down Middle Landing Road. So this is a overlay kind of showing the wetlands that come in there behind it. So it will have a significant buffer of wetlands, and these are river swamp. This is stuff that floods annually. But between it and the adjoining properties back there, I think there's about less than 10 houses down Middle Landing Road, and the property, the rear limit of the rezoning would come in line with the adjoining side, which is Perch Street, about 8 or 10 houses down that way too. Now, I know the staff has said that they thought Highway 204 was a good dividing line for the commercial development to the north and what would be suburban residential on the south. There are several things that have been before MPC lately. I know down at John Carter Road, there was a BN parcel that was rezoned recently, but the Dollar General also was recently rezoned. So this is a map. The great part is right there, the cemetery. The green is the parcels that we're asking to rezone. The yellow parcel up there is I think it was a Dollar General that was recently rezoned. It sits on the south side of Highway 204. The next parcel is also zoned, BN. I'll show you that second lower yellow is a nightclub. Then you've got the Dollar General, which was recently built. And there's another parcel there, which is still zoned RA and probably has a non-conforming use, but is some type of trucking yard. So while it may be RA out there, there's a lot of development that's up on Highway 204. This is not a significant rural area. Most of the other development or the other uses along there, it's kind of hard to get an aerial that goes the entire length, but a lot of surface mining. A great deal of that stuff is surface mines that are all along the river exploiting the sand. So while you can talk about neighborhood and residential, there's not a whole lot of residences out there. Most of that's going to come on the north side. And this really sits at the main intersection of, this premier development that's going to be out on the west side of Chatham County. 10,000 houses, y'all just approved. The developer's plan for Pine Hill, which I think was close to 700 units out there. All of them, they're going to access Highway 204 off Highgate Boulevard. And this is the view of Highgate Boulevard coming to 204. And this convenience store that's currently there is sitting right there to your right. The adjoining parcels, I've got a picture of another view of it from further down. When you get to this intersection, Highway 204 for the most part is 2 lanes, but in front of this convenience store, it's 3 lanes with a dedicated turn lane, a left turn lane into Highgate Boulevard. So the idea that the other 2 parcels that we're rezoning, the one that has the mobile home, one that has the duplex, are going to be zoned or are going to redevelop into residential, I just don't think that's going to happen. You've got commercial developments going to be immediately across. You've got a high traffic highway with a traffic signal there, and it's just not realistic to think that's ever going to develop or redevelop again as residential. The existing convenience store has a curb cut that runs about 258 feet along there. As the traffic signal is put in, there's plans for the traffic signal at this intersection. It'll be the only traffic signal between the county line, I think, and I-95. There's no other traffic signals along here at this point. This will be the only one. The curb cut there is going to create a safety issue. By redeveloping it, we'd have to get a new curb cut. It would limit access there. It'd be a safety issue if it continues like it is. And we think it's consistent with what ought to be the future use there.
Any questions for the petitioner? You did mention that they had gas tanks here at one point.
At one point, they did have fuel there. It's been a number of years.
Are there still underground storage tanks, or did they take them out? Do you know?
I do not know. I believe they may have been removed. It's been decades.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? I have one speaker card, Mr. Donald Dykes.
Who is the petitioner? So he doesn't need to speak.
Oh, this is the petitioner, okay.
He's for it.
Okay. Do we have rebuttal by staff?
I just would like, is this how I do? Okay. I just want to, I don't have to hold it. Technology. Just want to add, just for your information, that the existing convenience store property is about 1.5 acres by itself. And these 3 parcels, or the portions of the parcels that are requested to be rezoned, are about 1.8. So the request, if it is to be combined, would essentially double the size of the commercial property.
If I may, just for point of clarification, I know that we keep talking about the existing property, but that's not part of this application. The request is for the 2 parcels in the property in the back. The first I heard of them even having a conversation about the possibility of recombining is today. So I don't want us to kind of get hung up on that because we don't have any proof, or there's no way to even mandate that they do the combination because they didn't submit it that way. So again, just remember, you are reviewing the request that you've got before you is for the 2 parcels and the remnant parcel in the back. If it moves forward and they decide that they're going to recombine it or make a bigger parcel, great. They could decide that they're gonna leave the parcel that they got right now as is and do something different on the parcels that they've got before you to get rezoned. So just wanna make that very clear.
Mr. Noah?
So the item that's on our screen now, I don't know if you're looking at what I'm looking at. That was not submitted to you because that includes a partial,
What,
I mean, a part of the back parcel.
who's got the scroller? Let's see.
Was this-
What I'm saying is that, it does, that's what I'm saying. The partial, there's a portion on the back.
Correct.
That includes a little part of that one
Combining it.
that's combining. That's the only thing that's gonna be combined, which
Correct,
is the little piece in the back
right.
with the other two parcels up front. But the existing convenience store, which kind of is rolling into this discussion,
Right.
has not been part of any of the discussions we have had.
The item that we were just looking at that disappeared, was that submitted?
Just
Was this
go back.
submitted with the original?
No, sir.
No,
The-
it was
What was
not.
originally submitted, and which was referenced, we received this a few days back.
Okay.
What was originally submitted was,
Go back. Was that? Go back.
Was this
no,
submitted?
this is,
This is not what was submitted did not include the grocery, that convenience store, from what I've seen.
well, yeah, this is what, when the original application came in, we did not have a survey. We did ask for it.
The item that's on our screen right now, was this submitted with the original application?
Go to the, yeah, that was part of the rezoning, but let me, because there have been multiple submittals as part of this. The one that this one
Go back.
was submitted about a week ago, and this was an informal survey. This was submitted a couple days ago. And then by inquiring what was actually being requested, this is what the original request was. You can see it's a portion, about half of that back.
Just for clarity, the petitioner submitted this item that we're looking at right now, or this is staff?
This is staff created, but it was because the petitioner did not have a formal survey submitted with the original application, we had to find out exactly how much of that back parcel was part of this rezoning request.
But the point is that the front portion of the property that currently has the convenience store located on it was not part, from what I have
Right.
seen, of the
This is,
original
and
submission.
this is not part of the rezoning, this
So-
front portion is not part of the rezoning request.
That's
because
right.
it already is appropriately zoned, but the petitioners have indicated that the intent is to combine all of these parcels into one developable parcel. But they don't have to. Keep in mind, they don't have to do that.
Ms. Jarrett?
So you're telling me that the convenience store is already zoned for a convenience?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is what we have here, an incomplete, I mean, if you had time to work with these applicants, could we come up with a better, petition presentation?
Well, I think, yeah, going back, we should have waited for the survey, the official survey to come back, but we have that. So what's in front of you now is this.
That's right.
I think we're getting, for myself, a little confused with what we're here to do today. And this is not, the convenience store is already zoned. He's requesting, the petitioner is requesting the duplex, the mobile home, and a portion of the rear parcel.
That's
And
correct.
that's it.
Gotcha.
This is what is in front of you is the rezoning request.
Any other question, Mr. Manigo?
My question is, why are we showing this to put it part of the presentation when it doesn't matter? If that is not part of it, we shouldn't be showing this, guys. We're not sitting here for you to confuse us. We're here to prove something that makes sense, not something that's not part of it, the deal. And we do this constantly, which is not acceptable. Do I make myself clear?
Are you talking to me or are you referring to the petitioners?
I'm talking to you and the petitioner, whoever's going to answer. If you're showing something that really have nothing to do with what we're going to vote on, to confuse
the issue, why show it?
The intent was not to confuse. The intent was that the petitioners have mentioned to us that it is their intent to rezone these 3 parcels and combine it with the currently zoned BN parcel to allow for a larger developable
But
parcel.
we don't care about what he's going to do later. We only concerned about
That's a very
this.
fair point. That's up to you to discuss. What is in front of you are the 3 parcels being requested to be rezoned to BN.
That's it.
Any other questions? Mr. Wywood?
The 3 parcels as they are reflected on this survey is what's being requested?
Yes, sir.
Not, okay.
Yep, the corner parcel already has a BN zoning district.
And again, as I said before, I just can't stress, just to simplify this, the only thing that you are making a decision on are the 2 pieces of property that you saw on the initial request that was hashed, and a remnant or a piece of property on the back. That's it. There's no, I can't stress to you, there's no guarantee that this lot will be combined with the adjacent property. You have to make a decision as to whether it is an appropriate change or not. They could combine it, but it's totally irrelevant. So just stick with the facts of the 2 lots and the combined. That's it.
Mr. Noah?
Just on a personal note, I am somewhat appreciative to know that that is a BN on the corner, because that helps me to decide what that trend, what that area looks like. So knowing that, had we not known that, we're in my opinion, maybe spot zoning, where this is more in line with an adjacent property. So I appreciate seeing the complete picture, if you will. I'm sure we don't see everything. Something always comes up. But I just wanted to say for staff, I appreciate seeing a bigger picture.
We always include the
Adjacent property.
Yeah.
Petitioner wish to speak on this?
Well, I'll let Mr. Maupin, who's the engineer, maybe speak to the
Sure.
engineering issues.
Identify yourself for the record, sir.
Yes, sir. My name's Jay Maupin, Maupin Engineering. We will be the engineer on the project once the project takes shape and we figure out exactly what the development will look like on the back end. But the original application was to include all the high ground along the backside. I don't think you can see me point, but behind the cemetery, it included the high ground as well. But we've been working with staff, trying to reach a compromise where we could get their approval or their recommendation for approval in the process as well, and trying to limit that BN behind on the parcel in the rear. And the reason we had done that is because we're going to need additional land acreage than you would traditionally. I think Matt mentioned, we're going to have a little over 3 acres here on this project. But we're going to need that for the septic system out there as well, because this project will be on septic. And that obviously takes up a lot more acreage. And that has to be on the parcel with the project as well. It can't be on an adjoining parcel. So that's one thing to consider in the process of this.
Seems to me the piece on the back, the lowland, serves as some sort of a buffer between this project and the residential to the south of it, or whichever.
Yes, sir. The wetlands on the south side and the cemetery on the west side will serve as a buffer. Then obviously we have planned commercial on the north side of the project, so there will not be any impact there. The middle landing road would seem that it would eventually be improved, as you've got a 4-lane major drive coming out of New Hampstead lining up with it. The intersection is, I would envision the traffic warrants as New Hampstead comes online will be signalized as that project comes. And currently we have 3 curb cuts, 2 residential, and then this giant curb cut for the existing commercial. All that would be, with this rezoning and redevelopment, would be consolidated into one commercial drive that meets current DOT regulations and be a much better situation.
So because of this wetland buffer, it's not gonna impact the residential to the south, right?
Correct. And then the two parcels that were, really the two parcels and the only usable portion of the parcel behind you that we're asking for, it's really, once we take this portion off and combine it with the rest, that the parcel in the back's really worthless. There's nothing you can really do with it besides leave it as a wetland buffer, swamp bottom for the river. Those two parcels to your west are with 204 and the traffic you're gonna generate off of New Hampstead are really gonna be uninhabitable from a residential standpoint.
Ms. Jarrett?
It sounds like we're mixing it up again. You're talking about developing these 3 parcels and, are we looking at 2 parcels? Are we looking at 3 parcels? Are we looking at 4 parcels? Are we not sure what we're gonna do with the property? And why are we putting it on septic tank rather than tying to the sewer, which will be coming across the street in the future?
The sewer will be back into New Hampstead and we'd end up having to put,
Area across the street.
pardon me?
There'll be a commercial area across the street.
Correct, but then we would have we would have to pump to it, and the city and the DOT regulations wouldn't allow a private force main within the public right-of-way. So that would be an issue with the City of Savannah Water and Sewer Department. So we're kind of in a chicken and the egg kind of situation. We're asking for these 2 parcels and the remnant, because we can't have multiple uses on a single parcel if we were recombine it at this time.
Staff recommendation is to deny the rezoning. I need a motion from the, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Leave it up. All opposed? What's the count there? So the motion to deny the recommendation fails, right?
Yep. To approve the recommendation of denial.
The motion is to approve staff recommendation for denial of the rezoning. All in favor, raise your hand.
That failed.
Keep your hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the motion failed.
The motion failed. Do I hear another motion?
I'll make a motion with a question. Did we ask if anyone was here to speak against this? Yes. Okay. I'll make a motion that we deny staff's recommendation and approve the rezoning on the 2 parcels. One. As requested. As requested. Thank you. As it is conforming to the existing neighboring properties.
Motion is made by Mr. Noah. Do I hear a second? Mr. Welch.
One point of clarification, you said the 2 parcels, do we need to specify?
No, I said, I took that back. I said per the petitioner's request.
Okay.
I don't want to get into the 2, 3, per the petitioner.
There is a motion on the floor to accept the zoning change. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand, please. Opposed, raise your hand.
No, you need
Wait a
to
minute, keep
them
your
so
hand
she's
up,
got
keep
to
them
count,
up.
so-
Keep them up so she can count.
So currently in favor.
This is to deny the MPC recommendation and to approve the rezoning. All opposed, raise your hand, please. Motion carries.
Thank you.
The next item, number 9, Zoning map amendment 6078 Ageechee Road to rezone from RA residential agricultural to BN neighborhood business. Staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. This item is a request to rezone property. The property is located at 6078 Ogeechee Road. The petitioner is requesting to rezone a 5-acre portion, 5.02 to be precise, portion of a 19.64 acre parcel. The property under request is located on the south side of Ogeechee Road between Bradley Boulevard and Bamboo Farm Drive. This is a survey that was provided by the petitioner, which outlines the area in which they are requesting rezoning of a portion of this property. These are the boundaries of the 5.02 acre portion of the larger tract that they are requesting, and should the commission adopt this rezoning, this represents the portion that would be rezoned to the requested BN designation. The remaining portions of that parcel would keep the current RA designation. This is a vicinity map that shows the subject property here on the south side of Ogeechee Road, immediately across from the Bamboo Farm. On the tax map, you can see the highlighted portion of the property, which is the portion that's requested to be rezoned. The remaining portion to the rear is what's left over of the 19+ acres. On the zoning map, you can see the adjacent properties. The properties immediately left of the subject property on this zoning map are west, are within the city of Savannah. The subject property is within the unincorporated part of Chatham County. The PBC zoning classification that you see west of the subject property is a community business classification that permits retail and other commercial uses. There is an existing convenience store gas station at the corner of Bradley Boulevard and Highway 17. The portion of that's PUDM 15 is a multifamily designation that is not yet developed. The property owner is Thankful Baptist Church. They are seeking to sell the property to a retail developer, that portion of the property. Should this rezoning be adopted and the process move forward, the petitioner would have to provide a development plan that would have to be reviewed through the county site review process. That would cover all the issues related to the site and all the requirements, including building placement, parking spaces, stormwater, access, etc. This is an aerial map that shows the subject property and the general context around the area. You can see Southwest Middle School here, the residential subdivision south and west of the subject property. There are a number of commercial and light industrial uses adjacent to the property, and as I mentioned earlier, the Bamboo Farm across the street. In review of the BN zoning designation, staff found that the uses permitted within that designation are consistent with the future land use map designation, which is regional commercial. It is also consistent with most of the adjoining and adjacent zoning classifications at this property. Based on those findings, staff is recommending approval to rezone the subject property from the RA designation to the neighborhood business designation for the 5.02 portion as identified on the provided survey.
Any questions of staff? Ms. Jarrett?
Just one clarification. When the development plan comes in, we'll have a better idea of how this road is going to intersect with with Ogeechee and the adjacent properties, as well as how they will provide access for this portion to the southeast. Correct?
Yes, two things will have to happen should this project move forward. The first thing that'll have to happen is that the 5.02 portion of the property, if it were to get rezoned, will have to be subdivided from the remaining portion. Through the subdivision process, the access both to Ogeechee Road and to the remaining portion of the property will have to be established. And then subsequent to that, should the development plan come forward, then within that review, access to the property, whether there has to be a decel lane or something of that nature, will be established at that time. And then it would have to be consistent with all the development standards for Chatham County.
Thank you.
Is petitioner present?
Yes.
Please step forward. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Ed Farmer. I'm from Aiken, South Carolina. We, son and I, are small-time retail developers, and we presently are building Tractor Supplies. I have brought a brochure with just 4 aerial colored renderings. If I brought 12, if you'd like to have one, I would be happy to. The one of the ones that is a rendering of the store we just completed in Swainsboro, Georgia. And I believe you had already seen the survey I had done that identified the wetlands, because that was pretty critical as to the layout.
Any questions for Mr. Farmer?
I'm not sure if this will be Mr. Farmer or staff. We are looking at a zoning map amendment, period.
Yes, sir.
Not what's going there. We need to be specific about this is zoning and only zoning. It could be any business whatsoever that is allowed in that zoning district. So if we could keep those questions tied to that.
Any other questions of the petitioner? I do have one speaker card, Mr. Bobby Jones. Please step forward and identify yourself for the record.
Yes, I am Bobby Jones, and I currently have the privilege of serving as a pastor at Thankful Missionary Baptist Church. My mission today is threefold. First, thank you for the opportunity to present today. Secondly, to thank you for your service to and for us. And thirdly, to thank you in advance for a favorable improvement of this. As you deliberate among yourselves and collectively, and you consider the ongoing development along that corridor, the land currently only contributes property tax dollars to this community. With the establishment of a business, it will bring not only property tax, but it will also bring payroll taxes, jobs, which will bring disposable income to be reinvested in this community. So favorable improvement will not only help Thankful Missionary Baptist Church, will not only help Tractor Supply Company, but it'll help Chatham County, state of Georgia, and this country as well. So thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? Staff has recommended approval of the zoning change.
Make a
Do I
motion.
hear a motion?
Make a motion to accept staff's recommendation for approval.
Made by Mr. Nolan, seconded by Mr. Travis Coles. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, please. All opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10, zoning map amendment 4504 Ogeechee Road, rezoned from PBG to RM40. Staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item on today's agenda is a request to rezone 4504 Ogeechee Road. That property is currently split zone between the light industrial and the planned general business districts. The petitioner is requesting the RM40, which is a multifamily residential classification that permits a maximum of 40 units per acre, 40 dwelling units per acre. The petitioner is Classic Development Company LLC, and they are requesting this rezoning. Subject site is located on the north side of Ogeechee Road between Chatham Parkway and Heathcote Circle. As I mentioned, the property is split, as you can see in the zoning map. The front portion of the property, which is approximately 2 acres, contains the planned general business zoning classification. That classification is a commercial classification that permits light industrial uses, heavy commercial uses as well. And the rear portion of the property, which is a little over 7 acres, is zoned light industrial. And it appears that both of these zoning classifications have existed since zoning was adopted here. There's no records of zoning changes on this property that we have. We believe that property has been split for many, many years. In terms of the current development of the property, there is a former commercial building on the front portion that's zoned PBG. It is no longer being used. And on the rear portion, there are mobile homes on the rear of the property that have been there for quite a number of years. This is a tax map that shows the entire property that's being requested to be rezoned to the RM40 designation. The petitioner has not discussed in detail their intent for the property, but based on the zoning classification, multifamily is the primary use that's permitted in that district. And at 40 units per acre, the potential developable area would allow approximately a maximum of 300 dwelling units on the subject property. This is an aerial map that shows some of the general context of the area along Highway 17, Ogeechee Road, in terms of what's on the ground out here today. Generally, this area, kind of between Chatham Parkway and the Garden City boundary going west, is really characterized by commercial uses, outdoor storage, industrial uses. There's also vehicle sales in the area are common, and that's generally what you see in this particular area. The future land use map designates the subject property as commercial suburban. Really neither the current or proposed zoning classifications are consistent with that designation. In review of the pattern in this area and in comparison to the other corridors near here, including Chatham Parkway, the development pattern is quite different. It is quite characterized here in staff's opinion by heavier commercial uses. There's a significant amount of truck traffic because of some of the industrial uses in this area, including surface mines. There are existing heavy industrial uses very close to the subject property. And what you find in the area of Chatham Parkway as its closest comparison is that the multifamily uses that have been successful in that area really are characterized in terms of their adjacency to other uses by primarily office and commercial uses, and not the heavy nature that you find along this portion of Ogeechee. Staff's opinion is that this portion of Highway 17 is likely to tend toward commercial more than multifamily, and that multifamily is not compatible with the current development pattern in this area. Based on those findings, staff is recommending denial of the request to rezone to the RM40 zoning classification. I should mention, just for the record, this property is within the city of Savannah. However, it was requested to be rezoned prior to the adoption or the implementation of the new zoning ordinance. So the zoning they're requesting is based on the former zoning ordinance. But with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Is petitioner present? Please identify yourself for the record, sir.
Okay, gotcha.
I use that instead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Robert McCorkle from the law firm of McCorkle and Johnson. I represent Classic Development Company. Is it on, Marks?
Do I need to flip it the other way?
Keep going. Keep going.
It's hard to do that from here. I like the one over at the MPC. I'm much more used to that one. I'm out of my element. Okay. I represent Classic Development Company and Fitch Ehrlich Partners. They have the property under contract for the construction of a multifamily residential development. The property is about 9 acres. It's a large piece of property. 9 acres. It's about 1,000 feet deep off of Ogeechee Road, Highway 17. Starting by looking at the property, as was mentioned by Marcus, it is currently a mobile home park. It has been a mobile home park for over 60 years. Here are some photographs I'm going to show you of kind of the state of the property as it currently sits. We are on the Garden City side of Chatham Parkway, which I think is important to note. If you were to put a driveway in for this, you're talking about probably 1,800 feet away from Chatham Parkway intersection. So a third of a mile away from Chatham Parkway. So we're not exactly in the kind of intersection corridor for retail down there. It's another photo from back inside. There's about 40 or so mobile homes currently on the property. In addition to the 40 or so mobile homes, there's also permanent brick and mortar residential structures back there, a couple of different ones mixed in throughout the mobile homes as you go back. There's also a commercial, you might call it, piece of property on the front. If y'all driven down this part of Chatham Parkway, you've probably seen this. There's sometimes mattresses for sale and old furniture and various things out there on the side of the road as you're driving by, and you'll see it's right located directly on a bus stop. The surrounding property, as was mentioned, is primarily industrial and what you might refer to as kind of undesirable commercial uses. I think this aerial gives you a little bit of a better flavor for the area than maybe the one that was shown earlier. You can see the red dot that signifies the piece of property, and you can see the significant amount of industrial development that exists to the west as you go into Garden City, as well as significant borrow pits and mining operations that occur, in addition to the firing range area that is behind the property. And then you can see a nice new residential multifamily development immediately behind the property, back towards Chatham Parkway. The surrounding uses include, I'm just going to show you some photos in case you hadn't driven down in a while. We have a significant number of junkyards in the area, as well as container yards and container sales and repair facilities that are out on Ogeechee Road. In addition to the borrow pits, we also have several pieces of property that are used for outdoor sales of sheds, outdoor sales of various types of monuments, outdoor sales of granite slabs. There's an RV park across the street there, the Biltmore RV Park. But primarily across the street, what there are a lot of are used car sales lots with cars, as you can see, not parked in a parking lot. The cars are traditionally just parked facing out onto the street on Ogeechee Road on the highway, parked in the grass wherever they can be wedged along across the street. We've also got several truck repair facilities and trailer part sales places and other things, in addition to Macklejohn, which is to the west towards Garden City and is an industrial contractor with several warehousing facilities and large equipment projects that exist on their piece of property. This particular piece of property, if you're looking at it, going back to the aerial, is not what I would describe as right for retail commercial development. There's a lot of challenges with this property for retail commercial development. One is the distance from Chatham Parkway. This is unlike the businesses that are closer to Chatham Parkway, where you're on an intersection with a light and you might want to be a good place to have retail people coming off Chatham Parkway. Another challenge is the surrounding uses are not good. A lot of higher end or nicer retail you might expect are not going to be located there, which is why the retail that is there is of the quality that it is. In addition to that, because of the lot size, it's 9 acres deep and 1,000 feet deep. It's an awkward site for a retail development. You're unlikely to have 1,000-foot deep retail development immediately adjacent to a lot of industrial use. Because of that, it's not going to be a grocery store. I think the likelihood of that ever happening in this site, particularly in the coming decades, is highly, highly unlikely. So the property's been for sale now for getting towards a year. And what my client would like to do with this piece of property is to downzone it from industrial and business general, which is as heavy as a business use as you can have on the front and industrial on the back, to a multifamily development, keeping its residential character, which it has essentially always been. And so by keeping that residential character, but injecting $30 to $35 million project onto this site to house what we hope to be about 180 to 120 residential units, making that $35 million commitment to the community for property that we believe will better serve the community and the working community immediately surrounding in the area. There have been several successful apartment complexes built that you can see, one of them in the picture up there behind our site along Chatham Parkway. It's a good area for multifamily residential. It's a good area for density. Our client has built similar developments all over the Southeast, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, all over. These are just a couple of pictures. I know I'm doing this the wrong way. This is just a couple of pictures just to give you a feel for the types of developments that our client has done, kind of large scale, more dense, nice residential projects. And so I want to take a minute before I finish to just respond to a couple of the staff comments. Obviously, we have a staff recommendation for denial. When my client originally came to me, I said, well, we're downzoning an industrial piece of property, but maintaining its residential use and going to inject a large multifamily project on a stretch of road that could use some redevelopment. And I, was hopeful that we would have a staff recommendation with support, but we did not. But staff, essentially in the staff report that you reviewed, essentially raised what I'm going to call 3 issues, although they're really 2 issues. One is staff believes that this development will adversely impact adjacent and nearby properties by rendering the surrounding properties less desirable and therefore less marketable in the future. If we're talking about the current use of those properties, and the idea would be that by adding residential, I suppose, in this area, you're going to hurt the commercial uses, the kind of not favorable necessarily commercial uses in the surrounding area. If you're looking at it in the future, you'd be saying that by having this residential here, it's going to discourage the retail development that staff believes is going to occur on this road. I disagree on both sides. I don't believe that adding residential here is going to have any effect on the well-established long-term industrial and heavy commercial uses that are in the surrounding area. I don't think they're going to care. I don't think it's going to make a difference to them. They've been there a long time. I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I specifically disagree that this is going to hurt future development of the area. By adding 200 or so multifamily units into this property that is currently a trailer park, I believe that we're going to encourage retail development, if anything else. We're going to add residential bodies in the area at a greater scale that what I would think encourage retail to come farther away from the intersection of Chatham Parkway towards Garden City to serve our very development as well as maybe other developments that arise in the future. The second comment from staff was that they believe that this project would generate a type or a mix of vehicular traffic on the street or highway that's incompatible with the land uses around it. Staff also mentions in the report that, Highway 17 is a 4-lane with a middle lane divided highway that's 90 feet wide. I don't believe that having a couple hundred units apartment development is going to tax Highway 17 beyond what it's capable of handling. When we go through our site plan process, obviously we'll have to meet DOT standards for whatever our access points are, whatever that's going to look like, whatever road improvements they're going to require us to make on Ogeechee Road, we'll be required to make. But I don't believe the road as it currently sits now, 90 feet wide and essentially 5 lanes, cannot handle our development. It's also worth noting that BC under NUZO going forward does allow hotels on the site. It does allow other uses on the site that could be equally dense if such a use made sense in that location. And there are certainly commercial uses that could be put on the site or industrial uses. It's currently zoned industrial, so you could have industrial uses, I suppose, on the site that would certainly be more taxing on the road. Last comment, staff made a comment that introducing high-density residential in the area is not consistent with the likely development pattern going forward and is not compatible with the heavy industrial nature of Ogeechee Road. This is really the crux of the argument. I'd pose to you that that's a market decision. If the idea is that people aren't going to want to live here because of what's surrounding it, because I don't think the opposite's going to occur where we're going to run off Meiklejohn because we put a residential development here. If the idea is that residents wouldn't want to buy here, then our clients, who I believe to be pretty sophisticated, who develop projects, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects all over the Southeast, know their market. I believe they know their product. And I don't think they'd spend $35 million trying to develop this site if they didn't believe that people will come there and people will want to live there in this location. So we would ask that you would support our petition for rezoning of the property, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Mr. McCorkle? I've got one.
Yes, sir.
How far back from Ogeechee Road do you propose to build this?
The detention, I don't have the exact number of feet. The plan, there's no site plan yet. It's all conceptual, trying to make sure we get a rezoning, obviously, before we spend money on site plans. But the idea would be that the detention would be in the very rear of the property, so it wouldn't go the full 1,000 feet back, but it might go 800 feet back or something like that. It's going to go a ways back with detention in the very back.
So it won't be facing on Ogeechee Road at all?
It could, I don't know. It could be facing on Ogeechee Road. Obviously, the buildings themselves will be pulled up towards Ogeechee Road. It won't be like they're built back in the back with parking in the front or something like that. It won't work that way. But we don't have a site plan as of yet. That'll be a second step to this once we figure out if we get the zoning.
Any other questions? And I don't have any speaker
Thank you.
cards here. Staff like to make a rebuttal?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
So is the property, all that he indicated that was in front of that? All that he indicated that was in front of the property, the proposed property, is gonna be taken away, and the the project is gonna be facing Ogeechee Road?
Ms. Milton, sorry, we have not been privy to any concept plans or site plans at this point, so I can't really answer anything related to the future development of the property. We haven't seen anything.
Mr. Wells?
I want to ask you, this site, I can't compare Ogeechee Road to Highway 80 past Savannah Golf Club, where you had an apartment we approved to be built. I guess you'd call it Highway 80. And you got LNG behind it, chemistry facility, chemical facility behind it, industrial across the street, commercial across the street. And again, Highway 80 is a lot more attractive than what we're seeing on Ogeechee Road. I'm well familiar with this area, as everybody is, I'm sure. And that seemed to fit well there on Highway 80. And look what's around it. More industrial than you can imagine with those apartments that are fully occupied. And I think anything would enhance this area on Highway 80. If people are willing to want to live there, on 17, excuse me, people are willing to want to live there and rent there, anything's a vast improvement. And whether it's going to be housing, whether, as Noah said earlier in the pre-meeting, that it looks like Chatham Parkway is being developed and we're turning the curve. Well, we are. Growth in Savannah's coming, housing's necessary. Some people are being moved out in certain areas and have a place they need to go, but Ogeechee Road is gonna be developed, whether it's industrial or housing, and it's coming. There's not much land left in Chatham County, period. And I just don't see why this would not fit. But can you compare the two? Do you see the comparison that's pretty daggone similar?
Well, I do agree with you, Mr. Welch, regarding the sort of, I'm sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. I was just saying, I do agree with you regarding the comparison between Highway 80, that portion you're talking about, beyond the Golf Club. You know, it is a far more attractive area than, you know, what we're considering today, just in terms of that. I think in those cases, the adjacency of the industrial uses on Highway 80 are somewhat more obscure than they are here. And I think there are other reasons why this is kind of apples and oranges, in my opinion. I believe also, like you do, that Ogeechee Road is going to be developed. I think that sometimes, you know, one of the things that we try to avoid as staff is, you know, trying to make a determination on the development itself, because at this point, we don't have any idea if the petitioner even goes forward with this, what that will end up being, whether it becomes something desirable or not. And, you know, we've had many examples. I get that example you brought up about those apartments. There was a time when that was very likely going to be something else, as you probably recall.
Right.
And that project went away, and then we ended up with something better, in my opinion. So we try not to get too focused on what's being proposed and what it might end up looking like and how successful it might be. But just from a zoning standpoint, you know, we had a number of issues with the multifamily designation in that particular location. Not so much issues with what the petitioner's talking about in terms of their proposal.
Any other questions? Staff recommendation is to deny the rezoning petition. I need to have a motion. Motion one way or the other.
Motion to approve the petitioner's request to rezone.
Second.
I hear a first and a second motion. Any discussion?
How close is it to the jail? When it backs up?
Turn your mic on.
Way down?
Turn your mic on.
Oh, it is. It's, okay, my question was, how close is it to the detention center? When you start backing up that way and you start coming this way, are they gonna meet?
No, it's way off. You got apartments all around
I know.
the county
I know.
jail.
I know.
There are many other apartment complexes that they're building next to.
That back right up to it.
Got a lot more
I think
nicer.
we need to focus on the rezoning for
Yeah.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the
Yeah.
rezoning request. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion carries to approve the rezoning request. Item number 11, rezoning map amendment 1545 East Montgomery Crossroads from PRB to BN Neighborhood Business. Staff
Yes, sir.
number 11. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, before you today is a request to rezone this parcel at 1545 East Montgomery Crossroads. Parcel is currently located right at the southern end of the Mayfair development on the unincorporated county side. Right across is the city of Savannah, right here Lake Mare, and so on. It's located on the south side of Montgomery Crossroad near the intersection with Crest Hill Avenue. Property is currently split zoned between the PRB1 zoning districts, that's Planned Residential Business 1, and the R1/EO zoning district is one-family residential. In both cases, the EO signifies an environmental overlay, which doesn't affect the base uses that are permitted, and is in recognition of the area's proximity to sensitive wetlands. It's a single parcel measuring about half an acre. The P prefix, as always, just signifies that a site plan is required for redevelopment. Adjacent land uses, in this case, across the street, as you can see in the aerial photo, is the Mayfair development, which is within the city of Savannah, is zoned R6, single-family residential. To the west, you can see single-family residential. There's a Montessori school immediately to the south, and retail to the east. Now, the intent of the RB1 zoning district, and I'm quoting here, is to create an area in which certain types of convenience shopping, retail, sales, and services uses can be established and at the same time prevent nuisances or hazards created by vehicular movement, noise, or fume generation. Now, in general, that is to limit the commercial activity to, in essence, uses that are going to be unoffensive and that will have limited adverse impacts on adjacent neighborhoods. The proposed zoning district, in this case BN, or neighborhood business, is defined by contrast as simply a district providing convenient shopping facilities to neighborhood market areas. I've indicated here in the staff report convenient comparison table that indicates what's permitted both in the BN and RB1. You can see quite a few more uses are permitted within the BN zoning district, including adult daycare centers as by right compared to, for example, with special use approval, greenhouses. Also of interest are automobile service stations, and then accessory alcohol sales with a restaurant, accessory alcohol sales, the package store, and a variety of all these uses you see here. Briefly stepping through our criteria for rezoning, whether or not the district will permit adverse impacts on the surrounding neighborhood with regard to the uses permitted in the BN. We find that, yes, among them are a variety, including many auto-related uses that could create odor, noise, or increased levels of activity that could adversely impact the quality of life or property values in adjacent neighborhoods. And since the property fronts on Montgomery Crossroads, it's unlikely that there will be a traffic capacity issue in this case. And then finally, the proposed district and the existing district, for that matter, both consistent with the comprehensive land use plan, which designates it as commercial neighborhood. So to summarize, if we go back here, and here's some pictometry showing the existing facility and its relation to the surrounding neighborhood. So staff finds that the existing zoning district is appropriate for the current a set of uses, and in fact permits a wide range of flexibility, office uses, a range of retail and related commercial uses, and that the definition clearly aligns with the character of the neighborhood, and that it seeks to explicitly limit those uses that could have adverse impacts on that neighborhood. For development standards, BN is much more permissive as well, permitting larger amount of lot coverage, increased height, and staff finds it difficult to justify this in this case. Should also note that with regard to the, let's go back to the maps here. With regard to approving this rezoning, it would create a highly fragmented pattern where you have, this would be BN, you'd have a sort of finger of RB1, and then BN1 to the east. So longer term, a more comprehensive study for rezoning all these parcels to a consistent district for predictability may be desirable. But in light of the current petition, staff is recommending denial in this case.
Any questions of staff? Is the petitioner present? Please step forward. And identify yourself for the record, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Jamie Gonzalez, and I represent the Panaderia La Canasta LLC, which is the owner of the restaurant, Mexican restaurant, that is already working there.
Right.
And the reason why we are asking for this rezoning is because we are planning on to continue with the business in the same location, but we need to offer different other services to our customers, and that is selling beer or alcohol related to the Mexican restaurant. We don't have that because the zoning doesn't permit it. So that's the main reason why we are asking for the rezoning and encouraging the development of the businesses in the area.
Any questions? Mr. Wells?
Did you say beer and alcohol sales?
Yes, sir.
You realize there's a Montessori school right behind you?
Yes, sir.
And there's a Catholic school, grammar school,
About
200 yards or less?
200 yards from there, yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't alcohol sales prohibited within a certain distance of 200 yards?
There is another business toward west of that school.
There's a convenience store on the other side of Haney Creek. I grew up in Mayfair.
Yes.
I know this area.
Okay.
It used to
That
be a
convenience-
mansion where your store is.
And that convenience store sells alcohol too, doesn't it?
And, okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions?
And we
for
are
the
thinking
petitioner?
about inside the restaurant, you know what I mean? Not to sell, to carry out.
Any other questions? Staff like to rebut?
Sorry, could you clarify the question, repeat the question?
My concern was the alcohol sales, period, within school zoning area. You have a Montessori behind it for children. You have a grammar Catholic school. Every bit of less than 200 yards.
Yes, and I am not immediately familiar, that's handled by the city and their
Right.
alcohol licensing. I'm not immediately familiar with the provisions. I do recall other cases within the city of Savannah where businesses that wanted to sell.
This is the county.
I'm familiar, but either way, the same alcohol
That's
laws. That have been prohibited from doing so, that were quite a bit farther away from as an existing school property. So that is an existing concern. They would also be subject to special use approval.
Staff recommendation is to deny the rezoning request. Can I hear a motion, please?
Move to approve staff recommendation.
Second that.
Motion by, seconded by Mr. Welch. Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, please. All opposed? Okay. The motion passes. Request to rezone is denied. Item number 12, rezoning map amendment 2327 East Duran Avenue from RM 25 to BC. Staff presentation, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to rezone one parcel from its existing RM 25 multifamily residential, 25 units per acre, zoning designation to a BC community business designation. This is in the city of Savannah. Property in question is 2.26 acres in area and is located on the south side of East Duran Avenue, just east of Emery Drive. Per the petition, the petitioner intends to construct a contractor's office on the subject site, which is permitted in the BC district. Under NUZO, approved NUZO, the subject site is zoned RSF 6, which is single-family residential, and all adjacent properties to the subject site are zoned RSF 6 as well. Looking at the aerial map, the subject site is improved with a single-family structure. Adjacent land uses to the north, south, and west include detached single-family residential. To the east is an existing church. Looking at the street view, you can see that the property fronts Easter End Avenue, which in this area is a 2-lane road with no dedicated left turn lanes or deceleration lanes. This is looking east along Easter End, and this is looking west. Subject property is right here. Future land use map shows that the subject site and all properties to the north, south, and west are planned for suburban single-family residential. This is a maximum 5 units per acre, per net acre, while the church property to the east is civic institutional. Per the zoning ordinance, the intent of the BC district is to provide community shopping facilities consisting of a wide variety of sales and service facilities. This includes the petitioner's intended use, which is contractors' offices, but also includes hotels, indoor amusement facilities, package stores, offices, restaurants, gas stations, vehicle repair, and self-storage warehouses. The entire list is located in your staff report. Looking through the rezoning criteria, staff finds that this portion of Easter End Avenue is primarily single-family, residential in character, as opposed to the BC district, which permits a wide range of commercial uses, which could adversely impact this character and directly impact adjacent residential uses. MPC finds that the permitted uses in the BC district would be incompatible with the single-family residential character. Looking again back at the Easter End street view, a 2-lane road with no dedicated left turn lane could be inconsistent with a lot of the uses that are permitted, could cause some traffic backups, especially if some of the higher intensity uses are planned for the site. We also find that the proposed BC district is incompatible and inconsistent with the planned future land use designation for the site, which again is suburban single-family residential. So based on these findings, staff does recommend denial of the requested rezoning. We did receive 1 letter in opposition from a property owner who lives along Emery Drive to the west of the site. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Is the petitioner present? Please step forward. Present your case. Identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Mary Decker, and I'm here representing my mother, Sarah Bart, who's owner of 5501 Emory Drive.
Are you here to speak in opposition?
Opposition.
Okay, so
Is that all I have to
right now
say?
we're gonna ask if the petitioner is here.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
And then you can come and speak in a couple minutes here. Yeah.
Is the petitioner present?
All right, get back.
Hearing nobody. I have a speaker card from Miss Mary Decker. Please
Yes.
identify yourself for the record.
Yes, my name is Mary Decker. I'm sorry. And I'm here representing my mother, Sarah Bart, who's owner of 5501 Emory Drive. And, you know, as was already stated, it is a neighborhood of long-standing. Many people have lived there. My memory of the neighborhood is at least back from the 70s, if not longer. And, you know, I agree with everything that you said.
Any
'Cause we don't-
questions for Ms. Decker?
Because I don't think, we don't know what would be put in the middle of that neighborhood
Right.
and near the church, and there could be anything that might be inappropriate.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Decker? The staff recommendation is to deny the rezoning change. I need a motion.
Second.
Moved by Travis and seconded by Mr. Welch. All in favor? Looks like it's unanimous. Any opposed? The motion carries. Request to rezone is denied. That's the end of our regular business.
I just want to make an announcement if I can.
Sure.
There's a finance committee meeting on Tuesday, the 24th, at 11 o'clock at the MPC office, not here. Okay?
Any other business to come before this commission? If not, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
All right.